Catherine Merrick had not felt warmth in her bones for 3 weeks. Her children's crying had faded to whimpers 2 days ago because hunger had stolen even their strength to weep. And when she stumbled through the blizzard toward the collapsed figure, half buried in snowdrifts, her frost-bitten hands could barely grip the ragged shawl that was all she had left to offer another human soul. They had found her that morning trying to boil tree bark in melted snow, her 2 daughters huddled against her skeletal frame in the corner of their dirt floor cabin, and the neighbors who passed by no longer knocked because everyone knew a starving mother had nothing left to share and everything left to lose. Her husband had died in the copper mine collapse outside Butte, Montana 6 months earlier, leaving her with 2 children under 5 years old, $14, and a winter that showed no mercy to widows who helped strangers when they should have been protecting their own. The figure in the snow was a woman. Catherine could tell from the curve of the hip and the length of the dark braid frozen stiff with ice, and something in Catherine's starving mind whispered that this stranger might be the last person she ever helped, because the West had a way of making mothers pay for their kindness with the lives of their children. It was February 1889, and in the mining territories of Montana, where men died for copper and women died for everything else, Catherine Merrick was about to learn that sometimes a starving mother's choice to help a stranger in the snow carries a price that no one should ever have to count. If stories of impossible choices and the terrible cost of compassion in a world that punishes the merciful call to you, subscribe now, because what happens next will make you question everything you believe about the price a starving mother should pay for her humanity. The stranger's name was Mary Two Horses, and Catherine discovered this 3 hours later when the Crow woman finally opened her eyes in the cabin that barely deserved the name. Catherine had dragged her inside, this stranger in the snow, using strength she did not have and warmth she could not spare. And now Mary lay on the only blanket they owned, while Catherine's daughters, Sarah and Emma, shivered against the wall, watching their mother commit what everyone in Butte would call suicide by kindness. Mary had been traveling from the Crow Reservation to find her sister who worked in the laundries. She explained in broken English mixed with her native tongue, and the blizzard had caught her on the trail between the mining camp and the settlement. Her feet were black with frostbite, her lips split and bleeding, and when she saw Catherine's starving children, she tried to leave despite her frozen limbs, because even a stranger could see that this family had no help to give. But Catherine Merrick had made her choice in the snow, and a starving mother who helps a stranger has already decided that some things matter more than survival, even if the West makes you pay for such foolishness with everything you have left. She gave Mary the last of the bark broth, wrapped her frozen feet in cloth torn from her own dress, and when Sarah asked in a voice thin as winter wind if the stranger would take their food, Catherine touched her daughter's hollow cheek and said nothing, because the truth would break what little hope remained. The cabin measured 12 feet by 12 feet. The walls were chinked with mud and moss that let the wind through like knives, and the small iron stove in the corner held only enough wood for one more day because Catherine had been burning the furniture piece by piece, and they had already run out of furniture to burn. Outside, the blizzard screamed across the Montana mountains. Inside, the temperature hovered just above freezing. And in the space between those two hells, Catherine watched over a stranger she could not afford to save, while her own children grew weaker by the hour. Mary's 2 horses recovered enough by the second day to sit up and speak, and what she told Catherine made the starving mother understand that helping a stranger sometimes means carrying their burdens as well as your own. Mary's sister had disappeared from the laundries 3 weeks earlier, taken by a foreman who liked Crow women and did not ask permission. And Mary had been searching in the winter storm because the tribal police would not help, and the white sheriff laughed when she asked. She had collapsed in the snow not from the journey, but from the beating the foreman's men had given her when she asked too many questions at the mining office. And now she was trapped in a starving mother's cabin, while her sister suffered somewhere in Butte's maze of mining shacks and pleasure houses. Catherine listened to this story while feeding twigs into the stove one at a time, making the last of the wood last as long as possible, and she realized that the stranger in her home carried wounds deeper than frostbite and losses sharper than hunger. The neighbors came on the 3rd day, not to help but to warn, and their message was clear as the ice that hung from the cabin's eaves. Catherine stood in the doorway, her body blocking their view of Mary inside, while 3 women from the mining camp told her that keeping a Crow stranger was dangerous for a white widow with no protection. The foreman's men were asking questions, they said, looking for the Indian woman who had been causing trouble, and if Catherine was hiding her, then she was making herself a target the starving mother could not afford to become. One of the women, Mrs. Halloran, whose husband still had work in the mines, offered Catherine $5 and a sack of cornmeal if she would turn the stranger out. Let Mary freeze in the snow, where the West expected Indians to die, and save her own children while she still could. Catherine felt her daughters pressing against her legs from inside the cabin, felt their hunger like a living thing, felt the weight of every choice a starving mother makes when the price of compassion might be measured in the lives of her children. She closed the door in Mrs. Halloran's face and went back inside to a stranger who watched her with dark eyes that had seen too many white people choose comfort over courage. The West makes you pay for kindness. Catherine knew this, but she also knew that a starving mother who turns away from suffering teaches her children that survival matters more than souls, and that was a price she would not pay, no matter what it cost. That night, she burned the last of the wood and 3 of the floorboards. Mary told stories in Crow and broken English about her childhood in the Yellowstone country before the reservations, and Sarah and Emma fell asleep listening to tales of a world where people helped each other, because that was simply what people did. Catherine sat by the stove, feeding it splinters of wood that used to be their floor, and she understood that helping this stranger meant she had chosen a path that led either to impossible grace or certain destruction, and the West rarely offered grace to starving mothers who defied the rules of survival. The foreman came himself on the fourth day, and his name was Dutch Henderson, a man whose reputation in Butte involved disappeared Indian women and mine accidents that happened to troublesome workers. He did not knock, but kicked the door open, the winter wind howling into the cabin behind him, and he stood in the doorway with two men whose hands rested on the pistols at their belts. He wanted the Crow woman, he said, wanted Mary Two Horses, because she had been spreading lies about his business practices, and he needed to set her straight on a few matters of truth and respect. Catherine stepped between Henderson and Mary, this starving mother with nothing but bones and will, and she told him that Mary was under her protection and he could leave her cabin now before she fetched the sheriff. Henderson laughed at that, the kind of laugh that comes from men who know the sheriff drinks on their payroll, and he told Catherine that a widow with starving children should think carefully about making enemies of men who controlled who worked and who starved in the mining camps of Montana. Pause here and answer this truly. What would you have done standing between your starving children and a stranger's safety, knowing that helping her might cost you everything? When the choice is your children's survival or your soul's integrity, which price can a mother actually pay? Drop your truth in the comments, because this moment is where ordinary people become something more. Catherine's answer was to pick up the fire poker from beside the stove, that length of iron that had been stirring embers and was now a weapon in a starving mother's hands. And she told Dutch Henderson that he would have to go through her to touch the stranger in her home. The men behind Henderson put hands on their guns, but he waved them back, not because he feared a woman with a poker, but because he understood that Catherine had just made herself a problem that required a different kind of solution than immediate violence. He left with a promise that she would regret choosing a stranger over her children's welfare, that the West had ways of teaching starving mothers the price of misplaced compassion, and that she had until sunrise to reconsider her loyalties before he came back with the sheriff and the law that always sided with men who owned the copper beneath the ground. The door slammed behind him. The wind cut through the cabin like judgment, and Catherine stood holding the fire poker while her daughters cried and Mary Two Horses wept with gratitude and grief in equal measure. That night, Catherine made a choice that changed everything, not because it was wise, but because a starving mother who has already decided to help a stranger might as well help completely and accept whatever price the West demands. She took Mary through the blizzard to the one place in Butte where Dutch Henderson's reach did not extend absolutely, the small Catholic mission at the edge of town where Father Donnelly had been taking in outcasts since before Catherine had arrived in Montana. The journey took 2 hours through snow that tried to kill them with every step, Catherine carrying Emma because her youngest could no longer walk, Mary limping on frost-damaged feet while Sarah clung to her mother's skirt. And when they finally collapsed at the mission door, Catherine knew she had just made an enemy who would not stop until the price had been paid in full. Father Donnelly took them in without questions, gave them soup and bread that Catherine's children devoured like starving wolves, and he listened to the whole story before telling Catherine that she had done the right thing and that the church would protect Mary while they searched for her missing sister. But doing the right thing and surviving the consequences were different matters in the West. And Catherine learned this lesson when she returned to her cabin to find it burning in the winter darkness. Henderson's men had set the fire while she was gone, taking her choice to help a stranger and turning it into ash and smoke that rose into the February sky like a signal to every other starving mother in the territory about what happened when you put compassion before survival. Everything she owned burned in those flames, the few possessions from her marriage, the children's clothes, the photographs of her dead husband, all of it consumed because a starving mother had helped a stranger in the snow, and the West was making her pay the price it always demanded from women who refused to accept that cruelty was simply the way things had to be. She stood in the snow with Sarah and Emma, watching their home burn, and she felt the weight of her choice settle onto her shoulders like a physical thing, heavy and permanent and absolutely unregretted. The mission became their home for the next 3 weeks, and in that time, Catherine learned that helping a stranger sometimes opens doors you never knew existed, but also closes ones you can never open again. Father Donnelly found her work in the mission kitchen, paid her enough to feed her children, and gave them a small room in the back where at least they had walls and a roof that did not leak. Mary recovered enough to begin searching for her sister again, this time with the help of the churchwomen who knew the places in Butte where Indian women disappeared and sometimes could be found if you looked hard enough and cared enough to risk Henderson's anger. Catherine joined the search. Despite the danger, this starving mother who had already lost her home and might lose more, because once you choose to help a stranger, you discover that their suffering becomes yours, and their fight becomes the fight you cannot abandon without abandoning the person you decided to be when you pulled them from the snow. They found Mary's sister in a crib house on the edge of the mining district, a place where Henderson kept the women he took from the reservations and the immigrant camps, and the rescue involved Father Donnelly, 2 deputies who actually cared about law more than copper money, and Catherine Merrick standing at the door with the same fire poker she had threatened Henderson with weeks before. Mary's sister was alive, but broken in ways that would take years to heal. And when the sisters embraced in the frozen street outside that house of horrors, Catherine understood that a starving mother who helps a stranger sometimes saves more than one life, and sometimes the price you pay opens possibilities you never imagined when you made your choice in the blizzard. The consequences came swiftly because the West does not forgive easily, and men like Henderson do not accept defeat from widows and priests. Catherine lost any chance of work in the mining camps. Henderson made sure every foreman knew that hiring her meant crossing him, and for 2 months she survived on the mission's charity and the small sewing work that churchwomen could provide. Her children ate because strangers helped the way she had helped Mary. And Catherine learned that sometimes the price a starving mother pays for compassion comes back as grace from unexpected places. But sometimes the price keeps compounding, and you just have to accept that your choice will cost you for the rest of your life. Henderson tried to have her arrested for theft, claiming she had stolen from the cabin before it burned. But Father Donnelly and the honest deputies stopped that lie before it could take root. He tried to have Mary deported back to the reservation, but the territorial judge who heard the case had a sister who had been helped by the mission, and he ruled that Mary could stay as long as she wished. Spring came to Montana in late April, the snow melting to reveal a landscape scarred by mining and hope in equal measure. And Catherine Merrick found work as a laundress for the railroad crews who cared less about Henderson's blacklist and more about clean shirts and fair prices. Mary Two Horses and her sister opened a small trading post at the edge of Butte, selling beadwork and leather goods to the miners' wives. And they hired Catherine to keep their books, because a starving mother who helps a stranger becomes family in the traditions of the Crow people. And family takes care of family no matter what the white world thinks about Indians and widows working together. The price Catherine paid for her choice in the snow never fully disappeared. Henderson made sure she remained an outsider among the mining families, but she built a life anyway, because sometimes a starving mother who helps a stranger discovers that the price of compassion buys something more valuable than comfort or acceptance. 10 years later, in the spring of 1899, Catherine stood at the opening of the Butte Women's Shelter that she and Mary had founded with money saved from their trading post and laundry business, and she watched her daughters Sarah and Emma, now 15 and 13, help unload supplies for the families who had nowhere else to turn. Dutch Henderson had died in a mine collapse 3 years earlier, the kind of accident that happens to men who cut corners on safety to maximize profit, and his death had freed the women of Butte from a particular kind of terror that his name had represented. Catherine thought about that morning in the blizzard when she had pulled a stranger from the snow, how close she had come to walking past because a starving mother with nothing to give should not be helping strangers, and she understood that the price she had paid in hunger and fear and a burned cabin had purchased something that Henderson, with all his copper money, could never afford. The knowledge that you can choose compassion even when the cost seems impossible. And sometimes the West makes you pay for that choice. But sometimes the price you pay becomes the foundation for everything good that comes after. The shelter would help hundreds of women over the decades, starving mothers and battered wives and girls fleeing situations where men like Henderson held all the power. And every one of them would benefit from a choice Catherine made when she had nothing to give except her humanity and her refusal to let the cruelty of the West become her cruelty too. Mary Two Horses lived to be 87 years old. Her sister raised 5 children in the house they built with money from the trading post. And when Catherine Merrick died in 1924, at the age of 63, the funeral procession included white families and Crow families walking together through the streets of Butte in a demonstration that a starving mother who helps a stranger can change more than one life. And sometimes the price you pay for compassion echoes through generations in ways you never imagined when you made your choice in the snow. Some people say Catherine should have protected her children first and let the stranger freeze. That a starving mother has no business helping others when her own babies are hungry. And maybe in a world where survival is the only value that matters, they would be right. But Catherine understood something that the West tried to beat out of people. That a mother who teaches her children to walk past suffering because helping is too expensive raises children who will one day walk past her when she needs help because they learned the lesson she taught. The price of helping that stranger cost Catherine her home and her standing in the community and years of struggle that she might have avoided if she had just closed her door and let the blizzard do its work. But the price of not helping would have cost her something she valued more than comfort or safety, or the approval of people who thought compassion was a luxury that starving mothers could not afford. This is the story of a woman who helped when she had nothing to give, who paid a price that the West demanded from those who refused to accept that cruelty was inevitable, and who built something lasting from the ashes of her choice. If this story moved you, if you understand that sometimes the greatest acts of courage come from starving mothers who help strangers in the snow, then hit that like button, subscribe for more stories of impossible choices and uncommon grace, and drop a comment telling me about a time when helping someone cost you more than you thought you could afford, but gave you something more valuable than comfort. These stories matter because they remind us that the price of compassion is always high, but the cost of abandoning our humanity is higher. And sometimes a starving mother knows this better than anyone.